let's do an analysis, a post-mortem, if you want to call it, on the Bitcoin halving 2020. Let's look at some of the data. Let's look at some of the facts. What happened to the miners? What happened to the price? What happened to all the craziness? So yeah, let's look at the data. I prepared 50 slides. Let's go through them step by step. We're going to have a blast here. Have fun with the video. Hey and welcome to today's video. My name is Julian. On my personal channel here, I talk about all things investing, mostly Bitcoin. The idea behind it is to make people crypto fit for this world of Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, decentralization. In my normal job, if you want to call it, I'm the CEO of a company called Cake. If you want, check us out. We are the most transparent platform to actually let you lend Bitcoins, get cash flow in your Bitcoins. We just launched a new coin called DeFi that brings DeFi to Bitcoin, so definitely check this out. Let me link this down in the chat below. You can see it below. So here, check it out, have a look, sign up, try out the service. I think you're really gonna love it. But today I wanna talk about a different topic. Today I wanna talk about what happened from yesterday to today, depending on what time zone you're in. It was just yesterday or it was today. It really depends on what time zone you're in right now. And I wanna talk about Bitcoin halving. I think everyone kind of knows that it happened. I made a video on this channel, you can find it, where I explain the Bitcoin halving. What I want to talk about now is to do a bit of a post-mortem. So I want to actually go in, analyze what happened. I want to look at how are the miners doing, how are the fees going, is there any problems, what's the price going to do. So yeah, I want to kind of dive in here, and I prepared a bit of a screen share. So let me go through this. So I'm not going to go through all the 100 slides. So this was prepared for a group of investors where I kind of looked this through, and we're not going to go through 100 slides, but I think let's go through around 50 slides. We're not going to take too long. It should take around 15 to 20 minutes. It's going to go into some really great depth. Now the slides are in German, but you will understand them all. Don't worry about it. So yeah, it shouldn't be such a big problem. If we look at general crypto markets, and let me just zoom in a bit so you can see this a bit better. Over the past 7 days, right, and I look at 7 days here, Bitcoin was pretty much flat. And obviously, all the other coins underperformed Bitcoin except for Leo, which is this really weird stable coin at the end. It's not a real stable coin, but it's been super stable lately. So that's just really, really strange. But all the other coins basically underperformed Bitcoin, and the entire market was waiting for this halving. Yeah, if we change the view here, then we'll measure everything in Bitcoin. We can see that pretty much everything underperformed the Bitcoin, which makes sense. We have this really strong kind of Bitcoin dominance right now. We have had this. So I think still at the moment, Bitcoin is the game in town. So if you're thinking about, and this is actually the interesting question here, if you're interested in thinking about what should you invest in, should you invest into an altcoin, should you invest into Bitcoin? Yeah, at the moment it's pretty clear, like Bitcoin is the game in town here. Yeah, you can and then the larger coins are definitely outperforming the smaller coins. So I think these are the main things right now. There's even a metric that we actually look at, and the question is here, is it altcoin season? And you measure all the altcoins versus the Bitcoin. And over the past 30 days, it's been clear here. We've been constantly going down, and I don't see a big trend reversal here, right? So I think that's the main thing. Looking at some of the fear and looking at some of the greed here, I think we're in a really, really good kind of mix, and you can feel this in the entire ecosystem. Obviously, we have been in a bit of a limbo. People have been waiting for the halving, and that's what we have seen coming in. And the reason I kind of want to start with this is to set a bit of the stage, that you kind of understand where are we standing with all of this. Because now I really want to get into Bitcoin and the halving, and basically what happened over the past kind of 24 hours. Now, the very first thing that we can mention is that Bitcoin decoupled like before the halving from the S&P. And that was very, very interesting to understand this, because before, for literally the entire year almost, we had a very, very high correlation So if the S&P went up, Bitcoin went up. If the S&P went down, Bitcoin went down. And this kind of changed now. And so that's very, very, very interesting. The other thing that happened, we have searches for Bitcoin halving. Just compare this, right? So that's 2016. That is basically right now. So we have 3 times more Bitcoin searches than we had 4 years ago when it comes to the halving. So that's very, very interesting. So obviously a lot of interest for what was basically happening. Now the other thing is, if we talk about mentions in the headlines, just look at this, how popular actually this entire event was. So here in the dotted line, that's the Bitcoin price. What you can see here is the blue line. That's the halving, right? So especially obviously now in the past couple of days, we've seen a peak on this. The yellow one is coronavirus, obviously completely high. The trend is going down, right? People are a bit fed up with the entire topic. They kind of don't want to deal with it anymore. And just as a comparison here, that's gold, right? So these are the kind of lines here that we can see. There's another one, and that is a bit more pessimistic actually, and that's tweets for Bitcoin. So the red dots is Bitcoin price, and the blue line is the 30-day average tweet volume. Now what you can see here is actually it's been slightly trending down. So on Twitter in general, so Google search results, woof, through the roof. Press mentions, headlines going up, but tweets actually been kind of going down. So that's a very interesting one. There are some very powerful things. So that is some media in China. I don't know if you noticed that. So that's Chinese media, and they have been actually pumping Bitcoin like crazy. They talked about how Bitcoin is hitting $10,000. They talked about Paul Tudor Jones coming in. So that was very, very crazy, and that all coincided with Bitcoin actually hitting close to the $10,000. And there was something that was interesting. So you can kind of do this calculation in and out of the money around this price. And so what we have seen, and that was the pre-halving pump. We've had a massive, massive pump. I think you kind of noticed. And at this point, almost 3/4, so 2/3 of the people were in the plus. So 2/3 of the addresses were in the plus, which is very, very powerful if you just think about it. And let's look at this a bit, right? So let's kind of work our way towards the halving. But then what happened, and that's, I think, a bit of a surprise for many people, we've actually seen a pre-halving dump. Most people had expected that this dump was actually going to happen afterwards. But, and obviously the question here is, why did this happen before? We're going to actually look at this. I think for those that kind of looked at the charts and kind of understood some of the numbers here, it really kind of made sense that at the end, well, there was this resistance and then it kind of dipped back down. It was at the very vulnerable level, and then you had these mass liquidations here on BitMEX. Whoop, look at this like liquidation here. That's pretty crazy. And so obviously it was this very sensitive kind of area, and we dropped down to like 8,600, and check the difference here. So this is now when the price was at 9,000 something, so close to 10,000, right? So let's compare this after the dump. So now we're at 8,600, and suddenly the majority of the people are actually in the minus. And so, and that is something that's very important always to understand. Now, understand this. Most investors are not rational investors. They're very, very emotional, right? And so losing money obviously makes them always way more emotional than winning money. So we are at a very sensitive price, because like $1,000 in Bitcoin up and down, we're talking about around 12 to 15%, which is, I mean, that's a strong move, but at the end, it's not out of the ordinary. Like if Bitcoin goes up 10%, people talk about, man, like it's pumping, but it's not crazy pumping. But those 10% change the emotions of a lot of people. And right now we are at this very sensitive level. So that's very important to understand here. Very, very sensitive spot. A little bit down is gonna cause a lot of pain to people. A little bit up is gonna cause a lot of emotion. So be prepared. So the reason I wanna highlight this, be prepared right now. We're at a very emotional crossroad when it all comes to that. Now, as a successful investor, you wanna look at this. And I'm not a big chart analyst. I don't really care much about that. What I really care about is human psychology, right? I studied medicine. For me, it's really important to understand the human psyche. I want to understand how people think, because if I understand how they think, I can prepare. And then I can understand, okay, so if the price slides down slightly, people are gonna feel massive pain and we're gonna see massive negative news. We might see some accelerated selling. If we see a bit of positivity right now, people are gonna jump straight away into greed. Why? Because we go into the stage where people are way more positive. And I tell you, if you wanna be a successful investor, you wanna understand the emotions of other people, but you wanna kind of prepare yourself and kind of be upfront. And so now obviously the question is, and that was the massive question, why did we have this pre-halving dump? Why did the price dip before and not afterwards? Well, I took to Twitter and I said, if you're wondering why a Bitcoin drop happened, very simple. The supply was higher than demand, or demand was less smaller than the supply, which is exactly what basically happened. And literally, it was just people, and we're gonna look at the data. We're gonna look at data, and data doesn't lie. So the data is actually gonna show how suddenly, until before the halving, there was massive, massive, massive demand. And suddenly, like a day or two before, suddenly it all evaporated. And suddenly people were all like frozen. And I think some of the investors, they were like, okay, you know what? I made shitloads of money. I invested mid-March when there was this $3,500 kind of dip. And I invested and I'm making close to 3x. So you know what? Let me get money out and then let's just wait this halving over and then let's see what else we can do. And actually the data is really going to support this. And that's very important to understand because that shows that there's no point at the moment to be concerned. It actually looks super solid. So let's kind of look at this a bit more in detail. First one is the 10,000 price tag has been very, very, very difficult to actually cross, right? So it's been a very difficult kind of price to get over. That's the very first one. So far we've kind of crossed it 3 times. The first one was in December 2017, and that's the dark blue line here. So we crossed it, and then within 60 days, we kind of crossed beneath it, right? So didn't really stay over it. The next time was a few months afterwards. So that was 2018. We went above it again. Didn't really stay over. Within 30 days, we dropped beneath it. And the other one was last year, if you remember the last year's run. And it kind of fought, and then it dipped after 90 days. So the $10,000 has been a significant ceiling. Now, why is this relevant? It is really relevant. I started in Bitcoin 2014, and I still remember how difficult it was to beat back the $1,000. So for me, this was such a good reminder because back then in 2013, Bitcoin jumped through the $1,000, and that was prior that I had joined. So when I got into Bitcoin, Bitcoin was just actually crashing from 1,200 down to 800, and it actually went through the 1,000 again, but obviously from top to bottom. And I was like, you know what? I'm getting in at 800. And then I thought I was so smart, but actually I chickened out at 500 because Bitcoin was just crashing. I chickened out, I think, at 400. That's when I sold because I was making minus 50% and I was just all freaking out. Now the interesting thing was afterwards, as we know the story, it recovered. I bought back in at 500, so I actually lost $100 there. That was just because it was so early for me. I didn't understand the emotions. And then Bitcoin took a very long time. It took almost 2 years until the beginning of 2017 that the $1,000 were actually stable. It really took from 2015, 2016, 2 years until the $1,000 mark was actually broken for good. And then it never dipped below. And I can totally see something like this with the $10,000 mark. And look, it's gonna be very interesting looking at the cycles. You're gonna see this. And it's so impressive and it's so nice to see how history rhymes and what to learn from it, right? So that's why I have the slide in there because it's very, very interesting. Now here's just some analysis. This was also pre-halving dump, right? So first of all, the 10,000, it crossed it. It was clear it's not gonna hold. Also the metrics. So anyone that looks at data, anyone that looks at metrics, and I care about this a lot, right? I'm not someone who cares much about opinions. I don't care much about what people believe. What's really important for me is the data, is the facts. It's looking on the underlying thing. So if you look at those things, you should have known, okay, it's very unlikely that $10,000 are gonna hold. And well, the data was very clear there. I wanna be clear, I didn't sell. I'm a very long-term hodler. So for me, I'm not much of a trader. So I didn't trade the dump. I bought the dip though in March. And for me, that was a very clear buy. I like buying and then I like hodling. I'm not much of a seller. I only sell when I really kind of make some nice returns, and then I'm like, you know what, let's cash some parts in and maybe switch it into some other things, into some real estate or stocks or gold. But at the moment, I really think Bitcoin is a very good place to be with your money. So let's look at some of the interesting things here. So these are transaction fees. And you can see prior to the halving here, we suddenly seen a 3x in transaction fees, like completely tripling to the normal one. And that was crazy. If you tried to transact anything, like beginning of May, it was just like almost impossible. Everything was stuck. The mempool was completely full. And then looking here at transaction like fees in revenue for the miners, it just spiked. And it's gonna get very crazy when you look at what actually happened the day before the halving or 2 days before. And that's where the statistics actually come from, why it suddenly turned so negative. So let's take a really good look here. The blocks, they were completely full. This is data from blockchain.com. The blocks were completely full. They got really, really hammered out, and it was just packed. And if you follow me on Twitter, I actually tweeted and I said, wow, crazy how full the mempool is right now. And you can see this here. So this was the beginning of May. So let me zoom in so you can see this. So that's the mempool, beginning of May. You can see here, April, May. And this was right before the halving. Everything started kind of dropping. This was the sell. So here, that was the sell. Here, we already see lows, and then it started dipping. And that was very, very, very telling. And I just think that people didn't want to hold through the halving because they didn't know what was going to happen. So that was just really, really relevant and important in this entire thing. But like, again, if in doubt, zoom out, right? So let's zoom out just for a second, because we've seen this dip. People are like, man, you know, we were at 10,000, everything is going down. Now let's zoom out for a second. This is just until the halving, right? So that's year to date. So that's the very first year, 2011, that we actually had a price. That's 12, that's 13. Every green candle, it's a plus. Now look at this. Every 4 years, we have this negative year. Every third year is when this massive strong year happens, right? And this is exactly what I actually expect. I don't expect a super bullish year this year. I expect maybe 100%, which, don't get me wrong, crazy strong year, right? We started at 8,000. I wouldn't be surprised if we finish at 16 or 20,000 this year. But I really think the massive strong year is actually going to happen next year. And I could see this coming. And then maybe let's see if the cycle kind of repeats here, 2022. If we look at beginning of May, which is basically right now, you can see the exact same thing. So beginning of May, look at the prices. So 3, 5, 116, 456. So we have this massive increase. Now the 2015 year, we have a dip. 1, 2, 3, and we have a dip again. Right? So we have those cycles constantly, and that's very relevant because obviously in Bitcoin we have a lot of predictability in all this. One other thing to pay attention to, and that's a very interesting one, pay attention whatever currency you measure the performance in. And that's gonna be an interesting one because so many times we measure stuff in dollars, and it's really not smart to measure sometimes in dollars, because what if you change the measuring stick? Like if you are, I don't know, 5 feet 10, and I just measure the yardstick and I just change it, well, suddenly you get 6 feet tall, but actually you're not 6 foot tall, you're still 5'10", but I changed the yardstick. And that changes everything. So kind of pay attention to all of this. Yeah, and so basically that's leading up to the halving, right? So that's all pre-halving, all of this is known, not much kind of surprise here. I did for the German community, I did a halving day event on Saturday. It was a massive success. We had like thousands of people. I mean, we had 228 days of watch time. It was just crazy. We went for 6 hours straight, streamed. It was really, really fantastic. We had a lot of fun and a lot of value. Cointelegraph did the same thing yesterday. Their live got taken down. I don't know what's happening with YouTube. I don't know, like really strange. Crypto Purge, like they just took the video down. No idea why, but that's just crazy. Yeah, and so kind of the whole world was celebrating all this, so that's great. And so now let's look at the mining. What actually happened with the entire kind of, well, halving event right now? So obviously, we have better and better mining, right? So we have basically, since the last 4 years, we have ASIC mining. And so that has been the trending thing for the past 4 years. So let's look at how this actually performed. More and more efficient, but actually a lot of mining is not profitable. And that's what people misunderstand. So here you can see when it's profitable, then unprofitable, profitable. So it actually just turned profitable before the halving, and that's going to be crazy when you look at the actual numbers. So let's look at some revenue numbers here. So these are revenue numbers. They come from the block. Here you can see these are revenue numbers, months over months over months. And if you just look, even though we have been halving, so here you can see we've been halving the Bitcoin amounts that basically got distributed, the total revenue numbers consistently went up. And the reason they did was simply because the Bitcoin price went up. So even though only half of the returns were being paid out, the mining subsidiaries and the mining rewards consistently went up. Now what you can see is that also the fees, that was last year. Here we had some really high transaction fees, but generally speaking, the fees don't really kind of, at the moment, still don't make so much in the entire amount. But so kind of keep this in mind here. Yeah, maybe another one to look at some of the data that's also a very interesting one is how many did these how many Bitcoins did these mining pools actually earn, right? In this third epoch. So, well, we have Antpool, they made the most. They made close to 31,000 Bitcoins in mining. That's close to 15%. We have BTC.com, F2 pool. Via BTC, they don't mine on BT Core, in the BTC Core in the last ones anymore. And then we have a lot of smaller ones. Slush, yeah, they kind of juggle around every once in a while. But so we have those larger ones. And so here is a very important part for the next couple of days now. You're probably not gonna have a lot of small miners actually surviving the next week until the difficulty adjustment. Really, they can't afford it. And that's going to be very interesting when you look at data. It's going to be very difficult for them. But so here's where it gets really crazy. Up to the halving, we suddenly had this race. The hash rate has just been spiking. Like, this is data from blockchain.com. Man, the data been like pumping. And they have been pumping out blocks. Now look at the differences here. Suddenly 4 minutes, 6 minutes, 1 minute, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 4 minutes. Here there was that was kind of normal, 9 minutes, but 1 minute. Okay, here there was a gap, 22 minutes. But just look at this speed within an hour. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 blocks. Normally it should be 6 blocks within an hour, right? And that's actually why the halving occurred like almost 2 hours earlier than it was supposed to happen. That was just because the miners were pumping out blocks. The hash rate went like, man, it started mooning. And that was just crazy, right? Like everyone following it. Like in Singapore, I got up at like, I think I was up at 4 a.m. or something because I wanted to really follow the halving. And it was just nuts. And man, it was so exciting to see because suddenly it went so quick. And then the very, very special moment here, we had block 629,999 by F2 pool. Here you can see 12.5 Bitcoin reward plus a bit over a Bitcoin in transaction fees. You can see the hash here with the difficulty with the zeros. And then we had the switch to block 630,000. And that's when the halving happened. Only 6.25 Bitcoin, around 0.9 Bitcoin in fees, total reward. And that was done by Antpool. To look at here, this is a screenshot that I took from blockchain.com. I think it's from blockchain.com. I need to look. Yeah, I think it was from there. I've been digging through all the websites and looking all the screenshots here. So that's, yeah, 62999. That's still basically the old block. And then here we have, for the very first time, new epoch, 6.25 Bitcoins here. That was done by F2 pool. That's by Antpool. And now let's look at the F2 pool here. They put in the last block some really, really nice kind of reference to the very first block mined, that where Satoshi put in some kind of special code here in the Coinbase data, and they kind of state here, New York Times, 9th of April, 2020, with $2.3 trillion injection, the Fed's plan far exceeds the 2008 rescue. And that's basically a reference to the very first Coinbase data that Satoshi put in there, and they did it in 62999. So that very historic, very, very nice, really, really cool to kind of do this. And so now obviously we have this halving moment happening and everything went super smooth, to be honest. And let's look at some of the extra data here. Now the question obviously is, how is it post-halving? How does the mining happen here? And this is now where it gets a bit crazy. So we had this massive hash rate, but actually the hash rate kept pumping. So it kept going up, and that was crazy, but we are at a negative. Right now the price is around 8,000 something. Someone here posted 8,771, so let's say close to 9,000. Let's just round it. So pretty much most miners that are mining right now are actually mining at the loss. And that's crazy. And the question obviously is, how long can they actually sustain that? I mean, they're probably just investing and financing that Bitcoin just keeps pumping. That's basically their bet in all this. That's the key thing. Now we've seen a dip, so there have been some miners who actually switched off right when the halving happened, and that's just because it wasn't profitable for them. And then what we saw, and obviously now we have close to 12 hours later, now it's been started to normalize, but these are the blocks right afterwards. So here, look at these. These are basically the blocks right here, and you can count it through. And then what you see here is that there's very few blocks within an hour. So here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's pretty normal. But then here, 1, 2, 3, we only have 3 blocks within an hour where 6 should be happening. So there were some kind of fluctuations in all this. And then later on here, it started getting even crazier. Suddenly we only had 2 or 3 blocks within an hour. So there were some disruption. So let's not deny this, but at the end it was quite normal. Here, this is from CoinDesk. They made a really good graph here where they kind of averaged it out. Here you can see, obviously this should be the average around 10 minutes. So they average it out at 9 minutes. But here there's some really, really, really crazy kind of, fluctuation, all this. So here's some really nice data that I also think is very interesting. So that's over the last 3 months. These are the averages. So obviously you have a lot of more smaller miners here. Now let me switch this to the last 24 hours and watch I'm going to be switching back and forth. So these are the larger miners. Suddenly the larger miners get way larger, right? So 20%, here it was only 18%. Here, this is now suddenly 19% or almost 20%. This is only 17%. BTC, they actually dropped completely. Funny. Then we had Antpool. Here, 12. Now they dropped as well. Okay. BTC.com. No, they dropped down. So here they went down. So Pool, F2 Pool and Poolin, they got larger. So yeah, they grew, the smaller ones are losing, right? So, and that was expected. And so, and we're gonna see this for the next 6 days, actually 7 days. And that's when the next difficulty adjustment is actually gonna happen. And that's when, in my opinion, no more disruption should be occurring. So the next 7 days, so now is the 12th, so from the night from the 18th to the 19th of May, that's from that point on, we shouldn't have much mining disruption. Until that point, I actually think we're gonna see some challenges and we're gonna see some struggles. So kind of be prepared for that, right? I just wanna kind of highlight that with the news and so on. One other funny thing right now, and I made a Twitter post on this, we actually have now the biggest net sellers are not miners anymore. Because the miners, they sold around 1,800 Bitcoins a day and they dropped now to 900. But exchanges have to pay around 1,000 Bitcoin a day from taxes. Now you can calculate this very simply by simply going, and that's from Skew, which aggregates all those data, and that's just transaction volumes, aggregating everything. And if you kind of add all this together and you look at the taxes, and that's just like pure averaging it out, like now that's just the top 3 exchanges, Binance, Bitfinex, and BitMEX. They need to sell around more than miners. And that's crazy. That changes everything, right? So very, very interesting that miners are not the biggest net sellers anymore. It actually started to become exchanges. And that's a really interesting one. And then obviously now the big question is what's happening now to the price post-halving, right? That's what everyone wants to know. Obviously, like looking at, that's 2012, we saw actually an increase. 2016, we saw an increase, then the halving, and then over the next 90 days, we saw a decrease. We have a totally different scenario now. We saw a decrease, so let's see what happens over the next 90 days. I think over the next 90 days, we're actually gonna get to a break even of around 10,000. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a dip. Now there's a CME gap at 7,600. I think we're gonna fill this. So I think we're gonna drop down to 7,600. So if you're a trader, you might want to trade this. I don't trade, but so I don't have skin in the game. So don't listen to people that don't have skin in the game. I want to be clear, even though it's me talking here, only listen to people with skin in the game. I don't have skin in the game here because I'm long, right? So I believe Bitcoin is gonna go up. But I wouldn't be surprised if Bitcoin goes to 7,600 first, and then it closes the gap at 10,000. Time horizon wise, I think it's gonna take around 3 months. So I wouldn't be surprised if this takes around 3 months. And then, let's see, crystal ball here, I still think we're gonna see an all-time high this year. Could be happening. I think the massive bull run for Bitcoin is only gonna start next year. Let's see how right I am on this. Yeah, again, that's throwing darts in the dark. Let's see. And yeah, I'm not gonna go through the other 50 slides, quite lengthy. Just one final thing. After this halving is before the next halving. So yeah, happy Bitcoin halving. Next one is happening in 4 years, 1,458 days. Yeah, so that's gonna be a fun one. We're definitely gonna have the same kind of show there again. Yo, that's the data. Looking at some crazy stuff. Everything went way smoother than people expected, than I expected. And so everything looks super solid. Really excited. I think I'm very bullish for this. Yeah, let me know how you feel about this. Let me know if you're bullish right now. What do you think is going to happen to the price? Give me a thumbs up. Smash the likes. Yeah, Rita writes this. So smash the likes. How, yeah, my friend Ivan always says. I hope you're smashing the likes. And give me a thumbs up, follow this here, would be very curious. And yeah, one last one. If you wanna get cash flow from your Bitcoin, check out my company, Cake. I'll post the link in. Some really amazing stuff here happening. Check it out, use it. And yeah, I would love to welcome you as a user. I hope you're getting value out of this analysis. Yeah, data is always really, really powerful. So yeah, stay safe, stay healthy. Thanks so much. I'll see you next video. Subscribe and yeah, have a good one. Cheers everyone, bye-bye.